Are you ready to learn how to make an adorable overall dress like this one, no matter what size pants you're upcycling and no matter what size you are? Sound good? Hi, my name's Abby Messmer, and I'm on a mission to help absolute beginners start sewing their own clothes and wearing them, because isn't that the best part? And sometimes these upcycling projects or DIYs aren't always size inclusive. I've even found that to be the case for me sometimes. So I want to make sure that this project, which is adorable, everybody should have an overall dress in their closet, is accessible to everyone. So this is actually step 2, and I'm going to be showing you how to add some extra fabric to your project in case the pants that you're using just aren't quite big enough. But if you haven't done step 1, be sure to check it out here and then come back to this video. And if you've already done step 1, then let's jump in to see what the first thing we need to do to make these pants big enough. Step 1 is going to be adding more fabric. We need to add a little bit more so that way this dress actually fits all the way around us. To do this, it's really simple. We're just going to clip the front and back together like this. We're going to throw it on. Now I'm showing you everything on Betty because it's a little bit easier to fit on camera, and it's kind of easier for me to explain what's happening than when I'm doing it on myself. But you're going to start with the clips all the way in the back and then pull the front together as much as you can. Then you'll measure this gap. This does not have to be exact, just close to sort of in the ballpark, okay? Do not stress about this. Once you've measured the gap, then we're going to go and cut out 4 strips of fabric to help cover up this extra distance. The measurement for these strips is going to be the length of your pant leg, and then the width is going to be the gap. So my gap was 8 centimeters, so I am going to cut out 4 strips that are all 8 centimeters wide. Okay, once you have the 4 cut out, you're going to take 2, pin them to either side of the front, take your other 2, pin them to either side of the back, and then sew them on. Now it's really important here that you sew these on using a basting stitch, and that's just the longest straight stitch that you have. Now, if you need more information about basting, check out this video here. And if you're just new to sewing and not quite sure how to use your sewing machine yet, check out my free 5 steps to start sewing. It's everything you're going to need to know, all the basics of how to use your sewing machine so you can confidently start these beginner-friendly projects. Okay, so if you need it, down in the description for you. Now, once you have sewn these rectangular pieces of fabric onto the front and back of your project, you can trim off any excess if there is any, and then we're going to pin the front and back together and throw this project on again with the clips in the back, the gap in the front, clip up, and now we're going to actually start creating or designing your dream shape for this overall dress. Now, get prepared because this project, we're going to be taking this dress on and off about 100 times just to adjust and finalize and get everything looking exactly how you want. So just prepare yourself. It's very normal for this process. I did it with mine. I even did it with Betty, to be honest. So very normal. Let's see what we're going to start designing first. When it comes to designing, the first thing you need to decide is where do you want the top of your dress to sit? So this can be as high or as low as you want, you decide. But once you're happy with where it will sit at the top, pin this to your shirt. Now I can just stab Betty in the chest like this, easy peasy. Don't do that to yourself. You're just gonna want to take the pin and go sideways and pin through the dress, through the shirt that you're wearing, like this t-shirt, and then back out through the top, okay? And this, you want to do this in the center. And this is going to help you keep it in place while you figure out the other parts that we're going to be designing. The next thing that we need to design or decide on is the width of the bib. So when you look at an overall dress, it has this top section that kind of covers your chest area. That's the bib. And we need to decide how wide you want this. Now to do this is also easy. We're just gonna go to the side. We're gonna unclip a couple of these and you're just going to fold under the fabric until you can visually see that this is probably the width that I want, okay? Just play around with this. This whole thing is just meant to be a fun adventure, nothing stressful, okay? So now that you have that pinned in place, the next point that we need to design or decide on is the waist point. So on the side of an overall dress, you have this nice curve and there's some bottom point, like the lowest point of the curve, usually around the waist. So for this, you can either clip up or down. Just make sure you put a pin or a clip right at where you want the lowest point of the curve to be. Okay? Got it? Now that you have the bib width marked and the waist point marked, we can actually take this project off and head back to our sewing table. Now that we're back at the sewing table, we can use either chalk or a friction pin to mark these points, both the width of the bib and the waist point. Okay? I totally messed this up and I drew my points on the right side of the fabric. I really suggest you mark yours on the back. Just in case you do this wrong, you won't mess up or have any marks on the right side of your fabric. No one wants that. So if you need to transfer these to the back, do that like I did. But anyway, now that we have these points on the back, we're going to use them to make a little rectangle. So we can measure from the center front seam out to our bib width and draw a line straight down and then draw another line at our waist point. Okay, this is this rectangle. But overall dresses have a really nice curve, don't they? Not a rectangular boxy look. So all we're going to do is draw in whatever curve you like here. Okay, and that we have a curve drawn in, we can cut this out. But I will tell you that if you're nervous about messing this up or cutting it too small or anything like that, then make sure that you make your bib wider and shorter than you actually want, okay? You can always come back and keep adjusting this, but it's harder to add fabric than to cut it off. So if you're not sure, again, start wider than you think and start shorter. So I'll show you here on mine. I'll do this red line. I can cut this out, throw it on Betty and look at it and decide, is this right? Not quite. I want a little bit more. So I can take it off, cut the black line that I think I did want, and it's perfect. Okay, so play around with this until you absolutely love this top bib section of the front of your dress. Okay, got it? Yay! Now that we've added fabric, figured out where the top of our dress is, decided on the bib width and the waist point, the next step that we're going to work on is the side seams. So here's where you can just take pins and pin down the sides until you get the skirt shape that you want. Now, this can take several iterations, but all you're going to do is pin this in. Whenever you're happy, take your marker or chalk or friction pin and mark right there at that pinpoint, okay? Once you've marked it, you can take this off. Oh, I totally messed up again. Anyway, I marked on the right side of the fabric and it should have been on the back. So if you need help transferring these marks, a really easy tip is to just take your pin, put it right through the mark, and then you can mark that same position on the back. Easy peasy. So now that we have those marks on the right side of the fabric, we're just going to use a ruler and connect them. Then we're going to line up the top of our front and back together, line up the sides, and then clip down this to hold everything in the right position. But remember, when you go to your sewing machine, you're not going to sew right along the edge. You're going to sew the line that we just drew in, okay? Not too hard. It looks just like this. Okay, now you may put this back on and say, I still want it a little bit tighter, or maybe it's too tight, I want it a bit looser. This is your chance again to just play around. So pin it again, sew it, change it. Just keep working on this until you love the shape of the skirt. Step 6 is figuring out how long you want your dress to be. And I find the easiest way to do this is to hold the tape measure up above the top of the dress and then just dangle down the length of this tape measure. And when you're looking in the mirror, you can kind of visually say, okay, maybe I want it a little bit above my knee, or just visually move it up and down until you're saying, that's probably where I want this. And again, if you're not sure, make this longer because you can always make it shorter later. Okay? So once you've measured this, we're going to come back to the sewing table, measure down from the top of our dress, mark this in a couple places, connect those points with a ruler, and cut. The next step is working on the shape for the back of your overall dress. Now, probably the biggest that you're going to want the back of the dress to be is identical to the front. So I recommend just tracing the curves that we already have on the front onto the back, which is really easy to do when you lay your project flat like this. Trace those curves, cut them out, and try it on. Okay, really, really easy. But you may find out that when you try this on, the back is like flopping over and falling down and you can't really see what it looks like. A really easy solution for this is to just grab some ribbon or string or any kind of thing like that and pin it to the back and then pull it to the front and pin it in the front as well, okay? These will act as temporary straps until we actually make those in a future step. So for now, try this on, see if you like the look of it. Now, I personally think this looks too wide, but if you like it, keep it like this. But you can adjust the shape of the back as much as you want. So I drew this curve, didn't like it very much, drew another one. Okay, liking this. So the easiest way to transfer this curve to both sides and make sure that they're even is to simply fold the back in half like we did the front and cut right around here. Okay, so keep playing with this until you love it. And once you're happy with the back, and you have that ribbon or string pinned in place for the straps, make sure that you measure this because we'll be using that measurement when we make straps in a future step, like I said before. So make sure you write that measurement down. Don't forget it. And now the last and optional step that you have is to adjust the side seam. So you can see here that we've taken 2 pieces of fabric and sewn them together. So there's a seam right down the middle. I personally don't love the look of this. I'd rather have one solid piece of fabric. So there's a really easy way to do this. What we're going to do is remove this extra piece of fabric from our project altogether. And remember that basting stitch that we used? It's going to make our lives really easy right now. Because these stitches are so big, we can just take our seam ripper, we can pull out a couple of these, and when you have a little length of thread that you can actually grip and hold on to, you're going to hold on to it with one hand and then tug the fabric with the other. And you'll find that it starts gathering. Now, if you go slowly and carefully, you'll eventually be able to pull this string out, and both sides of the fabric will come apart. Easy peasy. Okay? So, now that we have this piece of fabric removed from our dress, we're going to cut it. And we're going to cut right along our stitch line, starting up at the hip point or the waist point. So you want to cut down the stitch line until you can lay this piece flat on your table. Okay, you might have to cut a little bit, you might have to cut a lot, play around with this. And once you can lay it nice and flat, iron it. We only want to see the right side of the fabric. So if any of your seam allowance is showing on the front, we want to make sure we cut it off like this. Okay, so once we can only see the front of our fabric, no tails hanging out from the back, then we are going to trace this onto our nice, pretty final fabric, whatever that fabric is for you. And once we trace this, then we are going to cut it out. Now, note, big warning here, do not cut this little dart or this little triangle here, okay? We're actually going to sew this. And once everything's cut out like this, to sew this, we're going to fold that little triangle in half and take a pin starting at the point of the triangle and poke it through one leg and then push it back through the same leg. So you really want the pin to be right lined up on the leg of this triangle. Once you have this pin in place like this, it's time to sew. Now, when you sew a dart, which is what this is, you're going to start at the wider point of the triangle and start just like you normally would. You're going to stitch forward 2 or 3, back stitch 2 or 3, and start sewing forward. Where it gets just a little bit different is when you get to the end, you're just going to sew straight off of the fabric. And once you're no longer sewing fabric, you're going to lift your presser foot and pull the thread so you have a long tail like this. We can trim off the excess from the wider end of the triangle where we backstitched, but for the end of it, where we let this long tail, we're actually going to thread the tail through a needle and just knot the end of this thread through the fabric inside of the dart like this. Okay. Once that's knotted, we can cut this thread and we have a perfect little dart. Easier than you thought, right? Okay, so now that we have the front, the back, and the 2 side pieces all cut out, all to perfection, everything fits exactly how you want, the very last step for this video is to edge stitch all of these pieces. And to edge stitch, all you're going to do is use a zigzag stitch, which again, if you have questions about zigzags, here's a video for you, or you can grab my 5 steps to sewing confidence down below. Either way, zigzag stitch around all the edges. And quick other tip is when you get to a corner, you can just stop your sewing machine, make sure the needle is in the fabric, raise the presser foot, turn it, and then keep sewing, okay? Easy trick. And if the top of this side piece doesn't look really neat and pretty, don't worry, it's going to be totally fine. Don't stress about this. Yay! You did it! You have now designed your very own perfect DIY overall dress. I know it was a lot of steps and it was a lot of trying it on, but when you're drafting something from scratch, this is a very normal process in sewing your own clothes. So what did you think? Was it overwhelming? I hope not. Was it easy, fun? Let me know in the comments below. If you have any questions, post them down there so I can help you. And if you'd like to sew this as part of a group, come hang out inside my Facebook group. I'm actually hosting this live if you are catching this as it's coming out. But if not, you can still come hang out in the Facebook group and sew with us whatever project we're currently working on. We still have a few more steps to go on making this overall dress. So once you have prepped everything like we did in this video, be sure to check out this on how to add the patch pockets to the front of your dress. Oh, they are so cute, so easy, and I will see you there. Bye.